Hey, we're Saints. Father Chris and Deacon Greg here. Glad to have you, beautiful people, with us. Welcome to our crucifixional live stream. We are glad to be back with you. It's been fun, this whole new format. I don't know. I kind of like it. Seems like it's fun. It's being well received. We thank you for that.
I like it too.
I like that you like it. So I want to share with you, we had a great conversation amongst our team here, and a text message came out that someone was bracing themselves for 3 hours of entertaining, unhinged mayhem. We decided we might create our own unhinged mayhem.
I think it's a way better podcast than Greg in the Kitchen, if I'm being honest. Which, if you don't know about Greg in the Kitchen, that's smart.
It's glorious.
It's better for them if they don't know about it.
Greg in the Kitchen. All right, so let's get after it. We've been having conversations as of late. It's fascinating to me that many people have been saying that they want to reject the Old Testament. And I don't think it's that they're being like Marcionites, right? For those who may not be familiar, there was a heretic in the early centuries of the church named Marcion, and he rejected the Old Testament, saying it was a different God than the God of the Father of Jesus Christ in the New. So, Marcion only took a few letters of Paul and only the Gospel of Luke and throughout the rest. The church condemned this. So I don't think these people are saying that per se, but they have a hard time because they have minds, and they struggle with things like, what are you talking about? The world created 7 days, 10,000 years ago. What are you talking about? 8 people surviving this massive flood that wipes out the whole world, and they repopulate everything. And why is God so rotten in that when he takes Joshua into the promised land and he kills all these people? Why would he, if he's a loving God, why would he kill all these people? What's going on? And Goliath, I always love that one. He's like 8 feet tall. Nobody's been 8 feet tall. Not even Yao Ming was 8 feet tall. He was only 7'1" or whatever, 7'4", whatever it was. Like, what are you talking about, right? And so they struggle with it. I even heard someone say to me, he's a reader and a thinker, that he is going to, I forgot the word he used, but basically ignore the Old Testament. He's done with it.
I think that that's fascinating because, I mean, if you really read and dive into the Old Testament, and I'll be honest, I didn't always read the Old Testament. Like I find a lot of the Old Testament to be boring. I find a lot of the Old Testament to be more confusing than other parts of Scripture. It's kind of weird. I don't always know what it is. It kind of feels like it's supposed to be somewhat of a history book. The way that it's always presented to us, like in Sunday schools and in different places, is that it's the history of the people of Israel. And it's just, it's confusing. And then there's all those sections that you get into, like Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Numbers, that are really just, they're there and they almost feel like they're filler. You get into the Psalms, you get into Proverbs, you get into so many of the different prophets, and there's just so much different stuff in there. Obviously, a lot of it we read in church, and so I'm familiar with those things. But what's really going on with that whole thing? Because it is confusing,
Yeah.
right? Like, and it does seem like God's different in part A and then part B, right? Like, and we look at them as two completely separate things. We also learn how to talk. But it's just a bizarre conglomeration of things. And I would love for you to explain what's going on.
All right. Your sentiments were expressed perfectly for so many of us. You and I both have heard intimidating, right? When talking about Scripture, or I don't understand it, or I get lost, all of those things. And I think it starts so let's spend some time. Let's go through this stuff because it's beautiful. I mean, it really is. The Scriptures are it's the most amazing book, hands down, par excellence. I mean, I forget the numbers because I'll get them wrong, but Harry Potter has sold more copies of books than any other ever. I think, like, whatever the number is, 100 million. I don't know what the actual number is. And yet Harry Potter is not even close to selling as many copies of Scripture. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Scripture is by far the most sold book ever, like by 1 billion or whatever the numbers really are, but it's exorbitantly, far ahead. That's because I think it's the most incredible book. The problem that many people face when they find it intimidating or when they struggle with it is the manner in which they read it, the approach they take to scripture, right? And so I think you opened the door wonderfully in something you just said a minute ago, and I'm not going to repeat it, so we'll kind of like play a surprise game. But one approach is to reading things is in the sense of meaning, right?
Mhm.
So you're familiar with Aesop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the most famous of all his stories is The Tortoise and the Hare.
Yep.
Tell us about it. I mean, just because, like, lay it out there so that, I'm sure everybody knows. And if they do, forgive me for repeating it. But
Yeah.
what's the story?
I mean, there's a tortoise, there's a hare, there's a race. The hare is fast, the tortoise is slow. The hare runs faster than the tortoise. And then as he is going, he knows that he has such an exorbitant lead. And then he just takes a nap. And as he's asleep, the tortoise, slow and steady, ends up winning the race. And that's how the story ends.
So, yes, I know. That's correct. Very well told. What's the point of that story?
Well, I mean, the point of it is that you just keep grinding, you keep going, you never rest on your laurels, you never sit back and relax. You just
Yeah.
keep going through things.
So there's a meaning there. And who really are the tortoise and the hare? Who do they stand for?
I think they stand for you and I,
Yeah.
because you're much faster than I am.
Yeah. Yes. I do need a nap so desperately. So, but I think you eloquate it perfectly. Like, look, it's a story that has a meaning, and there is no real tortoise and real rabbit that were in a race. They are stand-ins for you and I, people who read the stories in order to learn the point that Aesop is trying to make, that the author's trying to make. All right. So conversely, there is another way to read, and this is what you mentioned earlier, historically. So if let's say I want to learn about the Battle of Gettysburg, something about the Civil War, right? Gettysburg just pops in the head. How am I gonna glean any information about that? I mean, I'd go to the library, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to go to the library, you're going to get a book. I mean, when I was a kid, we actually went to Gettysburg.
Yes.
We saw the whole field of battle. We toured all the sites. We did a driving tour where they gave you a cassette tape to put in the car and listen to what was going on as they narrated where you were and what you were seeing. And then, I mean, I was very excited about Gettysburg. So I bought books at the gift shop and learned as much as I could about the Gettysburg.
Yeah.
The Battle of Gettysburg, the Gettysburg Address, all of the different things.
Totally. I mean, from what I understand, I've not been in many, many years. I was a kid too when I went. That they actually do like a reenactment. They have a play with actors that come out and reenact the battle. I think that's in Gettysburg. Anyways, what you're saying is exactly what it is. I mean, you're reading a book to get facts about individual characters that were present. Even studying Gettysburg goes beyond just that battle, because Lincoln comes into play because of the address. Grant as one general in one army and Lee in the other, even though, it's like my point in saying about Generals Grant and Lee is that the whole Civil War and all of it that comes into play now factors in, even though there are certain people that weren't in the Battle of Gettysburg. Obviously, Abraham Lincoln wasn't in the battle, but he gave his famous address there, right? And so, excuse me, we're learning dates and times and places. We learn about the actual battle plans and what happened, who won, why, and all that kind of stuff. This is an historical reading of, we would read a book in about an historical fact. We can even go to this historical place and see, and as I said, it's reenacted for us. In that type of approach, it's about data, it's about fact, it's about what really is. We might be able to learn the meaning of proper battle plans and why you could win that battle versus lose that battle, right? But the point of the historical writing, the historical account, is to tell you data, factual events and occurrences, right?
Yeah.
All right. So if those are two different ways to approach. One is approach reading something with the idea on finding the meaning and finding what the author is intending to say, versus finding factual historical events, personifying characters and historicizing events and dates.
Yeah.
All right.
That makes sense.
The question then is, which way, if those are two approaches, do we approach Scripture? Now, I realize that there are some out there who are going to say, oh, Father Chris, there are other ways to approach Scripture. Yeah, fine. But let's be honest. Most people, including many theologies, approach Scripture in the second manner, meaning historically. They're reading it as data. I am of the opinion that it is absolutely the most inappropriate way to approach Scripture. That to understand what's happening in Scripture, we must approach in the same way that we would approach Aesop's fable, right? So and we're going to go through some really hardcore examples in the next little bit to explain what we mean by that. But I really, because we come across so many, and people criticize, let's say like this, my mind's racing, but people will critique the Christian faith. You're saying that God created the earth in 7 days and 10,000 years ago. And I always giggle at that, but there are people out there who actually literally believe that, right? They also probably believe the earth is flat. So whatever. I mean, what are you going to do with that kind of stuff? But that's a critique out there. And like we said earlier, like there's no Goliath 8 foot, 9 foot tall. I mean, nobody's ever been that big. There are in Scripture, the Nephilim, these giants, right? Well, where are the giants? You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, we haven't found their bones. I mean, all of these criticisms, because in trying to find actual historical data in the way that you read about the Battle of Gettysburg from Scripture, you're missing the reason and the point and the manner in which the scriptural authors wrote. Aesop wrote with an eye on teaching a lesson about slow and steady wins the race. He didn't write a story about a rabbit and a hare that you're going to go find.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The author of a history book on the Gettysburg Address, sorry, I keep saying that, the Battle of Gettysburg or the address, either way, they wrote with an intent on telling you this happened on this day with this person in this place. Scripture is written from the first perspective, right? It's not to say that there wasn't a place or a time or people involved, but the point and the manner with which Scripture was written was like Aesop's fable. It's trying to tell you something. Now, we're going to talk about what that something it's telling us is, but that's the point, the approach.
Yeah. No, I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's put things into category. Let me rephrase. It puts things into a different light than what we're prone to do. It'd be like reading about the Gettysburg Address and the Battle of Gettysburg, getting really excited about Abraham Lincoln, going down a rabbit hole where then you start getting into the conspiracy theories with all of the interplay between Lincoln and Kennedy and all of the stuff that goes on between them. And then you go even further down that rabbit hole, and then you start watching the movies that they write about these men, and you then all of a sudden think that Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is a true story. You've never seen Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
I was just going to say, I don't understand all of the words that came out. But apparently there's a movie about Abraham Lincoln who hunts vampires.
Yeah. Yeah. Really? But it's not inspired by a true story.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same thing. At the same time, there are things within Scripture that kind of point us to thinking that way, where it might be confusing at times, like why some of the data that is included in Scripture that seems to be actual data, like in Isaiah chapter 6, it starts with the phrase, in the year that King Uzziah died. Is that to put context into when Isaiah is writing, or is that, just a fact to say, like, this happened?
I mean, yes. So it's a good question. Some interpreters are going to say that it is to historicize it. I even took a class on the Gospel of John in seminary where the author of the Gospel of John is pretty specific about, places and dates and times. And the
number of fish that were hauled in is like weird.
153, right? Like, the professor in that class was saying this was to prove that, the factual events and that John was physically there and so on. So some people approach it that way. I'm still going to just drive to the fact that those are things that are all setting context, perhaps, and also giving meaning, right? So to wrap all of this preamble up, and then maybe we can get into some real examples. Maybe we'll start literally in Genesis 1 at the beginning. And let's wrap it up by saying, my opinion is that we should approach Scripture from the same perspective that we would approach Aesop's fable, and that is fables, and that is that we are looking to hear what God is intending to say. What does He mean with all of this stuff? God, is not writing a historical text the way that there's a history book about the Battle of Gettysburg. He's got something He wants to say. And our job, our duty is to try to find out what it is He intends to say. All right, great stuff.
I think that's awesome. It's a good understanding of how to read Scripture and place it within its proper context, so then we can move on into the specifics and look at what's actually going on.
Yeah, totally. And people are going to disagree with my approach. Fine. I mean, that's fine. There have been, far better, smarter, faster, wiser men and women throughout the histories than myself. I'm just telling you what I think, and I'm going to do my best to prove that I'm correct in my approach by the text itself. I mean, that's the whole point.
So give me an example. What is the proper way to look at something? I mean, you said we'll start with day one of or page one of the Bible and the story of creation. Take us through that.
All right. So great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Start on day one, page one, in Genesis chapter 1. I mean, why not start at the beginning of the book? And I could talk about Genesis 1 through 4 and Genesis 1 through 11 for days upon end. I'll do my best to be brief, but you notice that in Genesis 1, it is the creation account. And we all know this. I mean, as Christians and the Jews as well use the scriptures. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, right? Lots happening right there in that sentence, in that first opening verse. And I didn't finish verse 2, but the earth was without form and void, and the darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. All right, so what's happening there? First, there's a positive statement that in the beginning, God created, right? And it means this Hebrew word bara, to create, is to make effective, right? So He makes it effective. Makes it functional. It puts it in the right order, which is to imply that there was first a chaos that must be controlled. All right, so was without form and void. Those are the English translations of the Hebrew words tohu wabohu. Play on words too. You can hear it, tohu wabohu, which literally means, destruction in the sense of like rubble. So you imagine if you have an army drops a bomb on a building and it all crumbles down and there's like rubble. That's kind of what's going on with tohu wabohu. It's completely disorganized, dysfunctional, chaotic mess. And God brings that chaos under control. And He does so by approaching and attacking the first bad guys, right? So you think about any story. Got to have a bad guy, right? You cannot have Star Wars be as powerful a story if there's no Darth Vader, which is why Darth Vader enters early on in the movie, right? Harry Potter, as we spoke of earlier in his books, it's no good if there's no Voldemort, right? I mean, Katniss has to have the President Snow. Any story, you got to have a villain. You have to have a bad guy. And Scripture posits the bad guys right away. The darkness and the deep, meaning the waters. And for anyone who is a Scripture aficionado, they know that the waters come into play all over the place, right? Moses dealing with water. I mean, Joshua has to cross the Jordan River. Jesus conquers the water by walking on it. Psalm 93. Water's the bad guy. And so the Spirit of God is hovering, it says, or is, floating across these darkness and this deep. So now we've got that God is making everything ordered, creating things in their functionality as they're supposed to be, and He's going after the bad guys. And He does so in day one, right? He does what?
God creates light in day one.
Right. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night, and there was evening and there was morning one day. All right. Again, fascinating, beautiful text. You're going to see this come back into play when you get to the fourth day too. He separates the darkness from the light. And He calls, the first half of the day and the second half of the light. He doesn't destroy that bad guy monster, but He takes control. And He puts the darkness over here. So He's separated, in other words, it's saying that He has created the location. It's not the right word, but location for darkness. He's mastered it. It's under His thumb. So God, this Elohim, in the Hebrew word Elohim for God, is has taken control over the darkness. So day one, he conquers and controls the first monster, which then rolls into day two. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and separated the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And there was evening and there was morning, a second day. So again, Elohim, God, takes control. He separates the second bad guy, the waters. He's got it in his hand by, putting it the sky, the heavens, in between the waters above and the waters below. Right now, obviously, we know that there is no water floating up in the heaven, that the earth is a globe, and so it's above but below. And all right, so we get that scientifically today. But the point of that statement is God took control and separates the waters, right? He is the master, the Lord over this chaotic waters. And so day one and day two, the bad guys have already been brought under his thumb. Going even further, God will conquer the waters even more on the third day, right? Watch what he does. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called the seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind upon the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a third day. I mean, again, day one, he separates light from dark. Day two, he separates waters above from waters below. Day three, he gathers the waters below and he boxes them in. He gathers, right? Mm-hmm. Like he boxes them in with the dry land. And he called them the seas. And that dry land does something very interesting. It produces vegetation, right? Seed, food, which is coming for all of which, we'll see in the next few days, the things that are to come. He gives them the place to live that's now ordered. He gives them control over the bad guys that are coming to get them, the darkness and the waters. And then he boxes those waters in with land, which produces an environment hospitable to life, right? He's going to give food. We don't know yet to who, but he's given seed that's suitable for everyone. And it's also interesting to know, Deacon Greg, it was good. Everything thus far that God made was good.
Yeah. I think it's fantastic, especially to understand he's going through a specific order. Like he's really working hard he's God. So,
maybe it wasn't hard. Right?
Maybe it wasn't that difficult. But my point is thinking through it, it's well engineered, if we could say it that way. There is a clear order. There is a method to his creation. Madness, if you will, a method to his creation. There's a methodology that he's following, and he's going in very clear order to order everything in a way that now for us makes sense how he's ordering things.
Totally. And it gets even more incredible when we go and roll into the fourth day. So thus far, great stuff, by the way. That was great stuff. We should continue, talking about days 4, 5, and 6, and 7, because it was 7 days, right? All right. So to do that, let's look at day 4. Recap: day 1, light; day 2, heavens, skies; day 3, seas and the dry lands, and the vegetation. And thus we roll into day 4. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, days and years, and let them be lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser night to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. Now, it's a strange position to put the greater and lesser lights and the stars in the sky. Why on day 4?
Well, that's kind of, for me, where my mind immediately goes. He creates light in day 1, but the things that give light don't come into play until day 4. How does that play out? Why does that play out?
You nailed it, right? And think about this. So He creates daylight on day one, as you said, and the things that give light, the sun, it's not there yet. So there's something going on there. The second part of it is you'll notice on day 3 he creates vegetation, but we all know and have known that it takes the sun to help grow the crops.
Yeah.
So what he's done here is tremendous. He, the authors, God, is tremendous by putting the greater lights, the greater and lesser lights, the stars, the heavenly bodies on day 4. He's crushed them. That's important, as we'll see in just a moment. He's crushed them in that God is the one who creates light. He's the source of light, not these bodies. And number 2, he also is the one who gives life through the vegetation, i.e. the food. It's not, you know what I mean? So why is that important? I think it's important. And also notice he doesn't name them the sun and the moon.
Right.
He says the greater light and the lesser light. Why is that happening? My contention is that, and most scholars, or at least many scholars of Scripture, will say that what we have as Genesis chapter 1 was probably written or at least redacted during a period of time when the Israelites were captured and exiled in Babylon, right? I think it was probably later than that, even much later, but regardless, that's what the majority of the thrust is. So, around the 5th and 6th century BC. And the people of God were captured and they were slaves in Babylon. And the Babylonians had this pantheon of which they had many deities, 2 of which are Uta and Nunna.
I love the way you say those names. Say it again.
No, I'm not going to say it again. You say it.
Uta and Nunna.
Yeah, but who are these deities? I should have given you pictures. But Uta and Nunna are the sun and the moon gods. Right. And so in you can see it clearly in Ezekiel. He's trying to establish, get out of here, man. There ain't no gods. There's only one God, right? And so by using that mentality in Genesis, I'm not even going to give you names. You just, whatever. I made you. Mm-hmm. You're nothing, right? And I plopped you in the skies, and you're going to do some things for me, but I'm God. I'm in control. You don't produce vegetation and give life in food, and you don't give light. I gave light, right? So it's a deliberate, emasculation of deities, other gods. And people are going to say, yeah, but Father Chris, there's only one God. Well, you know that, and I know that, or at least we believe that, right? But that didn't start until Ezekiel.
Yeah.
Right? In their world and in their context, there were gods all over the place, right? Every city or city-state had its own deity or deities, right? Mm-hmm. So this idea of monotheism, it didn't exist. And so God is crushing and emasculating all of them.
So essentially it's being written in a way that is emasculating the gods of another place, who is holding down the people who follow the one true God captive, as a way to give them hope, to give them a promise that, look, our God is not just the God, he is the God. He is bigger than all the other gods that people are claiming are gods. And in the way, like I think a couple weeks ago or last week, we talked about the way that people understood God was that if there was a war, the 2 warring armies would come together, and the warring army that won, it was because their God beat the other people's gods in battle in the heavens. And this is a way to say, from the get-go, our God has beaten down this God, and he will take care of you, and he will sustain you. And then, that's where the vegetation starts to come in. That's where all the stuff starts to come in. And he's laying this out, the author of Genesis, and God is laying this out to explain that our God is the God. He is the God to be followed, and goes beyond all of this other stuff, goes far beyond what anyone else's claims of who their God might be are actually able to pull out. Does that make sense?
You're reading it like Aesop. I mean, that's the whole point. Now you're starting to say, what's going on here?
So, sorry, it's kind of interesting. If you remember a few years ago, there was the Bible series that was on the History Channel or something, which is funny in and of itself, the Bible on the History Channel. But it was fascinating to me and really well done, the way that they started everything. And the start of the show didn't start with Genesis. It actually started with raging waters and this giant boat filled with animals raging and rocking and going in these raging waters on the sea. And then you hear the voice. And if you had on closed captions, it said Noah, colon. And it said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So the way that they were even interpreting Genesis without maybe even knowing that they were interpreting Genesis this way is that the story of Genesis was a message of hope that Noah was telling to those to say, God will take care of us even in the midst of this flood.
Right. Absolutely. And you can see it, if my theory is correct, that it was written in a period when they were in Babylon and captive, or at least captive under somebody, whether the Babylonians or, during the Persians or Alexander the Great, when all that stuff came through later. Regardless, it is to say, like, your God is the God.
Yeah.
And he's got it, right? Which is, like you say, it is it is the message of hope, right?
Yeah. So I think that's fantastic stuff in explaining to us a lot about how to read scripture, how to not look at it historically. Because if it's a story that is promising a message of hope, reminding us that our God is the God, then, we shouldn't read it literally,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not to say that I don't believe it, but I'm willing to concede that God did create the earth exactly 7 days, 10,000 years ago, in the exact way that, maybe it is factual, but regardless, like, I don't believe that, but like, either way, regardless, this text that we're reading is not written with that in mind. It's written, as you said, to tell us a meaning.
So rather than read it as the history of the Watergate scandal, it becomes an opportunity to watch a show like on HBO, White House Plumbers, that is inspired by true events. They might get some of the factual data correct, but overall it's more a story that has some historical stuff peppered in it.
Yeah.
Telling us a meaning about something.
Yeah, I think you could say that.
All right. That's awesome.
I didn't watch Watergate. Good stuff.
White House Plumbers.
White House, Watergate.
White House Plumbers. Anyway, it's a long story. I'll tell you about it later. We don't need to bore everyone else with this. But as we move on from that, I think we should look at the rest of Genesis 1 because, I kind of want to see how the story unfolds the rest of the way.
So let's do it, baby. Come on, And the God said, let the waters bring forth, this is verse 20, God, let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, birds fly above the earth across the firmament of the heavens. So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature. That means, by the way, that the Loch Ness Monster is real.
So is Sasquatch.
But he didn't come to the 6th day.
No, but he's also in West Virginia.
And every living creature that moves with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them and said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, a 5th day. Right? So
I only said that he's in West Virginia because they have him in the airport.
You should show the picture.
I will later.
Show the picture.
All right, I got to go find the picture. So why don't you talk about day 5 and I'll find the picture of Sasquatch.
You cut it in later. That's fine. That's good stuff. So day 5. Now he's filling the seas and the skies. The birds. He's created the animals, if you will, that are there. And again, it was good. Now it's important, the location of the birds and the fish of the sea monsters, all that stuff. Location meaning on day 5 as opposed to day 6, because as we roll into day 6, you see something even more interesting. And God said, verse 24, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, cattle, creeping things, beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and cattle according to their kinds, and everything that creeps upon the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. And God said, and God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful, multiply on the earth, subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, and so on. And God said, this is now, I'm jumping down to verse 29, I've given you every plant yielding seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with a seed in its fruit, you shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything and so on. And I've given the green plants for food. And God saw that everything he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and morning, a 6th day. So he wraps up his creation by making the creeping beasts, right?
Mhm.
Like cattle,
Yeah.
bugs, whatever,
Animals.
animals. And then he makes man. Now, before we get into the whole man issue, because we tend to anthropocentrize everything, right? It's all about man, which is the battle of scripture against ego in the first place. Excuse me, but notice what happens. There's like, I don't know if you can pull this off on screen, but notice what he does. Day 1, he creates light. Day 2, he creates the skies. Day 3, he creates the land and he boxes it in. Now on day 4, it's like a parallel to day 1. The sun and the moon, which are not even named to emasculate those gods, he creates the lights that give the light. Day 5 corresponds to day 2 in that he's created the skies and the seas, and now he fills them with the fish and the birds. And the day 6, which is corresponding to day 3, where he creates the land and the vegetation, he puts the beasts of the earth and man on it so that he can, and feed them with that seed. Do you understand? Like, you see what's happening there? I don't think that's, by chance. That's why I say the order is so important, that the days come, because he could have put man first, right? I mean, why not create man on the first day after the ground? Why do the birds and the fish and then the animals? So, I mean, it's deliberate, I think. And ultimately, all of this creation is very good, right? So, like, that's going to be important later when you get into Genesis chapter 2. Maybe we'll talk about that another day.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, too, the way that you just said that. All of creation is completed, and he says it's very good. In our hubris, which I think we should come back to later, we think that it is very good because that's the day that he created man. Yeah. And we tend to think and talk about it as though, like, look, God created man, therefore he gave man all of these things, and then he said, now it's very good. And I don't think that's really what's going on. It's the totality, as you pointed out. It's the totality of creation that is very good.
Yeah.
It's that he's finished the work that started in verse 1 of, I'm going to gather everything, I'm going to order everything and create everything, build something out of this rubble, and now I've looked at it and it's very good.
I mean, you said it better than I could say it, I think. I mean, it's, to use my teacher's word, he creates a symbiosis, right? So he's got the environment, the building blocks for life, a place to live that he has ordered and conquered the bad guy monsters of darkness and waters in order to give us a habitable environment, right? Yeah. And he's given the food, right, for all 3 parts of this environment, the plants, animals, and human beings, right? Like, in other words, and we all have to work together. Interesting, too, as I said earlier, we tend to, well, I don't know. I think that's good stuff.
I think it's fantastic because at this point, creation's done. He's done everything. The only thing that we didn't look at is the 7th day, which I think is equally fascinating in and of itself. But maybe we can talk about that
at another time. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that next.
So, yes, let's do that. But first, let's go back to man.
Let's go back to man. I think it's smart.
Because we tend to make everything about us. I mean, I believe that Scripture's thesis is the abolition of ego. And to make it about us is, egotistical.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thrust of the beginning, right? It's not in the beginning you created. It's not in the beginning this stuff was laid out for you. It's in the beginning God created. It's a, as you often say, it's a who story, not a how story.
Right. Totally. Now, so to get into man, let's parse the Hebrew a little bit. First and foremost, we often want to say he saved us the best for last. I don't know. I mean, maybe, but definitely I think there is oh yeah, don't you worry about it. Because who's he trying to humble? He's not interested in humbling the fish and the great sea monsters or the plants. He's wanting to teach us. And so I think putting us in the position last is to say you're just part of this whole symbiotic whole. You're a piece of the whole. Now, what's fascinating too is that, and often people, when they get into this, like if I were to say to you, any listener, anyone, who, they would say Adam. He created Adam and Eve. All right. So why is that important? First, sorry, were you going to say something?
No.
So first, in Hebrew, Adam is not a name of a dude. it actually is the masculine noun Adam for man in the sense of humanity, human beings, right? So in the Hebrew of chapter 1, verse 26, it says God created Adam, the man. But systematically, and this is what's so fascinating to me, in chapter 1, verse 27, meaning immediately following, he shifts from Adam to Ha-Adam, where it will remain consistent all the way through chapter 4. And to beat the Hebrew dead, but Adam, man, Ha-Adam, the man. So that addition of that article HA sound, ha, it means the. So it shifts and becomes the man, meaning humanity at large, all of humanity. And that's why you see, it's really funny. God created, what is it? Verse 27. Let me read it so I get it totally right. But so God created man, Ha-Adam, in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them, right? It's to say it's about humanity, not one dude, right? Now, notice this too, real quick. It's interesting. Why is Adam always referred to as him? Well, it's because in the Hebrew language, Adam is a grammatically masculine noun.
Right.
That's why it's him. And watch this. We might talk about this another day. It's important because its counterpart, its feminine counterpart, Ha-Adam, is the man. Ha-Adamah is the ground. And you will see in a few short verses when the second creation account is told, he, Ha-Adam, the man, is created from Ha-Adamah, the ground, as are all the rest of the beasts, right, in the second creation account. I mean, that is not, in my estimation, in any way by chance. That is deliberate from the hands of the authors.
Yeah, we're created in the same way that all the beasts are created. We are, as much as man is given authority over the beasts, we are not better than the beasts. We are not like superior the way that we might think we are.
Yeah.
We're just created in the same way, created by the same God. And the only difference is the purpose that we are set to.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I mean, clearly human beings are different than any other animal and any plant. I mean, obviously, right? We all like to say how smart dolphins are and whales, and they are. But they are still not able to do what we're able to do. But by saying that we are created last on the sixth day with all the other beasts of the ground is to say that God's creation in toto, right? Entirely, all of God's creation is important to God. Which is why, like, even in Christian faith, even in the Orthodox Church, there is a push for ecology, right? Like, in other words, take care of the environment around you.
Right.
Because it's God's. All of it matters. We can use it for our benefit and our living, but it is not to be abused, right? And so, I mean, I'm not, super adept at all that kind of stuff, at like knowing the ecological positions of the church, but it's there.
Right.
Because it's God's creation.
Right. And we're called to be the stewards of God's
Yep.
creation, which is that purpose that I was talking about, which I know Genesis 2 will get into, but it's all of it is, if we're reading this literally and reading this as a historical understanding, then we're going to delve into that and go down that rabbit hole where man is exalted, man is better than everyone else, man is the best thing. When we look at it for the meaning, we realize that the meaning is to humble man and recognize man's need for God.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole statement. Hey, the world was chaos. Tohu wabohu.
Yeah.
I, God, brought it all under control, and I made it a habitable environment for you and all the rest of my creation.
Which also says that today, while your world is again chaos, you who are in captivity in Babylon or wherever you might be in captivity, or you who are living in 2025 in North America and are dealing with all of the drama that you're dealing with and the cell phones and are in captivity to the realities that we create.
Yeah.
And that we go down and we think matter more than anything else, that we place ahead of God. Scripture is telling us, put God back at the beginning as the one who is on top, as the one who is telling you. And that is the message of hope. Because in all of it, the leaders that are taking care of you, that are not actually taking care of you, God is the true leader. Like we have that friend who always says that his king is in another world or is in another place. He doesn't serve the king that we have here, and you say that all the time. Like it's fantastic. It puts everything back into a new perspective, which then allows us to reframe how we see the rest of the world.
I mean, perfect. So, sorry, were you going to add something?
But it's lost if we read it literally.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so that's why I take the approach I take. So Aesop's fable is not about a rabbit and a turtle that existed that we can go find their bones. He's trying to tell you slow and steady wins the race. Don't pull over and take a nap. Scripture, likewise, as we can see from the outset of Genesis 1, is doing exactly what you said. It's saying, come on, man. I know there's other stuff out there, but God, I'm the provider. I'm the life giver. I'm the source. Go live your life out there in the world, but don't do it outside of me. Definitely don't do it with yourself as leader. I have got you.
And don't be swayed by these other gods that are telling you we're going to take care of you. We'll be nice. We'll be great. It's better over here. It's this, it's that. And that is played out throughout all of Scripture.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Great stuff. I mean, really.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. What's going on with day 7? Just to wrap everything up and finalize everything. What really is happening on day 7? How is that functioning, and why does it exist? Why do we talk about it in that way?
So I think, obviously he uses 7. Number one, I think the reason that there are 7 days is because in Scripture, 7 is the divine number. So it's because technically on 6, the 6th day, God is done, right? And excuse me, if he's God, he doesn't need to rest. Like, why does he need to rest? Like he's tired, you know what I mean? So why put 7? I think first is that the author has to wrap the cycle up. It's got to be divine. The second part of it is it's going to play, that Sabbath day is going to play a major role throughout the rest of Scripture, right? And it's not because Saturday or later Sunday is a particularly special day in and of itself. It is going to be, we'll see in Exodus, a test. Will you abide by God's commandments, right? He's provided, given you everything, but he's going to give you some commandments, which we'll see in the very next chapter. Are you going to do it? Right. Are you going to follow his business and do his business as opposed to do your own? And you hear, and I'll just read the verses, I'm sure we all know it, but thus the heavens and the earth were finished and all the hosts of them. And on the 7th day, God finished his work which he had done and rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had done. So God blessed the 7th day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all his work which he'd done in creation. And people often read from chapter 2 all the way through verse 4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. And they use that verse. So as we know, the 7th day comes to us, not in chapter 1, but chapter 2, verses 1, 2, 3, and some say 4. I think that is incorrect. I think verse 4 is a intro into the next section.
Right.
That the verse 3 is where the creation account, the first of creation narrative concludes. Mm-hmm. Like he saw everything he did. It was really good. And he rested. Done. Right. And as I said earlier, I think that the Sabbath is going to be, we'll see it right away with Moses, right?
Yeah, and it plays in throughout the New Testament as well. It comes in all over the place, this idea of the Sabbath. What are we doing on the Sabbath? I mean, Christ asks at one point, is the Sabbath made for man or man for the Sabbath? Like, what is the point of the Sabbath? And I think it goes again. It's, as you said, it's going to be about the commandments of God, and are we following God's commandments? And it's a test, and it's because we need that Sabbath as a way to have that rest ourselves, but also to follow God's commandments. Yeah. It is the day that is set aside for God. It is a reminder that we need God. It is a reminder to get away from ourselves, to follow all these other things. Yeah. And, it's something that even the rest of our society is built upon in a lot of ways. Like, when do our calendars start for each week? They start on Sunday.
Yeah.
But in other places, they don't start on Sunday. They start on Monday. It's a deliberate way that we look at things to keep God in the forefront.
Yeah. Think about it in the Arabic language.
Yeah.
The days of the week are numbered.
Yeah.
They don't have names. And Sunday is Al-Ahad, the first. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's even now that many Arabic speaking people are Muslim and that's not their Sabbath day. Originally, that's where, anyways, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, do we need to wrap up, or can we get? I mean, I could go all day.
I mean, I think that understanding the Sabbath, putting it in this place, and understanding all of these things, the whole point of all of it is that God has created everything. We are a part of that creation. We are set to task as things go on, and as that Genesis chapter 2 verse 4 starts the new cycle,
Yeah.
and starts that new thing, we're then set to task. And maybe if you want to give a teaser for
Yeah.
something we can talk about down the line.
So let's do that. But you said something, it popped. How does this apply? Like we've been pushing the whole idea that read for meaning, listen to scripture for the meaning, not as a history book. And I think the point of that Sabbath, it's a call to all of us to come to church.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you what I mean. I'm not guilting anybody to come to church. You know as well as I do, probably better than I, that in our particular parish, we have exploded beyond our capacity to deal with it. And we're thankful to God. So I say that because it's not like, oh my God, we need more people. We have people, right? We're very blessed in that sense. But why then do I say you got to come to church? Because he's testing you with the Sabbath. He's saying, look, and it will come to the fore with the 10 Commandments and Moses and all that stuff. Honor the Sabbath, right?
Yep.
He's saying, I've given you everything. I've provided the perfect garden for you, the paradise that you can live in. It's symbiotic with all the plants and the animals and the birds and the great sea monsters. And
Sasquatch.
yes, and I will provide for you, right? I've got you. I am going to, and you'll see it happening in chapter 2 right away. I am going to ask you to do what I say. And one of the things I say is honor the Sabbath. Do no work on the Sabbath. Now you got to imagine as they're wandering out in the wilderness, they're supposed to go out and collect, they being the Israelites under Moses, they're supposed to collect, enough manna that falls from heaven for each day's use, except on the Sabbath, they get 2 because they're not even supposed to go outside and do anything. Could you imagine? I mean, that's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
And God is saying, honor that Sabbath, remember me. Going to church is not about checking a box and saying, look how good I am, or even about being, arrogantly self-focused that I went so that God could fill me, though that's certainly part of it. Honoring the Sabbath is answering his call, do you remember that I am God?
Yeah. It's like what we were talking about when we talked about what is worship. The prayers that we say in church are all addressed to God. He doesn't need those prayers. He knows them already. He doesn't need our prayers the way Zeus needed our prayers, because he is the one true God. He is the God. He's not in this pantheon looking to be better than the other gods. He is God. But we address all of our prayers to God as a reminder that we need God, that we need something more than ourselves. And he is the source of all of those things. And church, coming to church, is not about us coming to church because we have to do this duty.
Yeah.
It's about us coming to church because it gives us the strength to get through the rest of all the crap that we're dealing with all over the place.
With he who is the source.
Right.
Absolutely. So, I mean, with all of that being said, that's the point of why we beseech people and beg people to go to church. It's not about like needing them there for our sake. It's about exactly what you said. So with that being said, I was just going to say that it's been a great week.
We'll be back at 9 and 10.
If you're going to come to church, ahlan wa sahlan, welcome. We want you to come join us. But for those who are not and you want to watch online, which is not quite as good, it's good, but not quite as good as going, you can join us. We will have Orthros Liturgy at 9 and 10 a.m. on Sunday as usual. And the teaser for next week, why don't we do chapter 2? Let's get into the whole garden stuff. Right?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll do that. We love you. Have a great weekend. Join us on Sunday, 9 and 10 a.m. Pacific, respectively. And we'll see you again on Monday to talk about Genesis 2. Love you, beautiful people. Have a great weekend. As always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.